Child draws strange figure. Repeatedly, psychologist matches it to cold case file. The autumn rain drummed against the windows of the Cascade Child Development Center as Dr. Sarah Chen arranged her materials for the day's first session. Seattle's perpetual October drizzle had persisted for 3 weeks straight, turning the city into a gray watercolor painting that seemed to blur at the edges. The weather matched Sarah's mood perfectly. She'd been struggling with a particularly challenging caseload, and today promised to bring another difficult session with 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez. Sarah glanced at her watch. 9:55 a.m. Emma would arrive any minute with her grandmother, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been bringing the child to therapy for the past 6 weeks. The referral had come through the school district after Emma's teacher noticed the girl had become increasingly withdrawn, her academic performance plummeting from honor roll to barely passing. What concerned everyone most were the episodes. Moments when Emma would suddenly stop mid-conversation, her eyes would glaze over and she'd begin drawing frantically on whatever paper was available. The office door opened with its familiar creak, and Mrs. Rodriguez appeared with Emma trailing behind her. The elderly woman's face bore the weight of constant worry, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun that emphasized the deep lines around her dark eyes. Emma, small for her age with long black hair that often fell across her face like a protective curtain, clutched a worn backpack against her chest. "Good morning, Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma," Sarah said, offering her warmest smile. "How has the week been?" Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head slightly, a gesture Sarah had come to recognize as the woman's way of indicating another difficult week. "She's been drawing again, doctor. Every night. Sometimes I find her at 3 in the morning, sitting on her bedroom floor with crayons scattered everywhere." Emma remained silent, her gaze fixed on the carpet. Sarah noticed the dark circles under the child's eyes had deepened since their last session. "Well, Emma," Sarah said, crouching down to the girl's eye level, "I have some new art supplies today. Would you like to see them while your grandmother and I talk for just a minute?" Emma nodded almost imperceptibly and allowed Sarah to guide her to the corner of the office where child-sized tables and chairs were arranged. Sarah had learned that Emma responded better to indirect approaches. Too much direct attention seemed to make her retreat further into herself. Mrs. Rodriguez settled into the chair across from Sarah's desk, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "Doctor, I'm scared," she whispered, glancing toward Emma to ensure the child wasn't listening. "Last night I heard her talking to someone in her room. When I went to check, she was alone, but she kept saying, 'He's watching, he's always watching.' When I asked her who, she just pointed at her drawings." Sarah felt a familiar chill run down her spine. In her 15 years of practice, she'd encountered many children dealing with trauma, but Emma's case was proving uniquely disturbing. The drawings were the key, always the same figure, rendered with a precision that seemed impossible for a 7-year-old. The man in Emma's drawings was tall and thin, with shoulder-length dark hair, a distinctive scar running from his left ear to his jaw, and what appeared to be a birthmark on his neck shaped like an irregular star. "Has Emma ever mentioned seeing this person in real life?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice low. "That's what frightens me most, doctor. When I ask her about the man in her drawings, she says she's never seen him. But yesterday she drew him standing in front of our house. Our actual house with the blue shutters and the rose bush by the front steps. She drew details I didn't even know she'd noticed." Sarah glanced toward Emma, who had already begun drawing on the large sheet of paper Sarah had provided. Even from across the room, Sarah could see the familiar figure taking shape under Emma's intense concentration. The child drew with an urgency that was both fascinating and deeply troubling. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I want to try something different today. Would you mind if Emma and I had our session alone? Sometimes children feel more comfortable sharing when they don't worry about upsetting their caregivers." The elderly woman hesitated, then nodded. "Whatever you think is best, doctor. I'll be in the waiting room." After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Sarah approached Emma's table slowly. The girl was completely absorbed in her work, her small hand moving the crayon with deliberate strokes. The drawing was already well developed, the same figure, but this time he appeared to be looking through a window. The detail was extraordinary. Emma had even included reflections in the glass. "That's a very detailed drawing, Emma," Sarah said, settling into the small chair beside her. "Can you tell me about the man you're drawing?" Emma's hand paused for just a moment. "He has sad eyes, she said quietly, not looking up from her work. But he's not sad. He pretends to be sad, but inside he's something else. The sophistication of this observation sent another chill through Sarah. 7-year-olds typically didn't possess such insight into emotional deception. What do you think he's something else inside? Sarah asked carefully. Emma added another stroke to the figure's face, darkening the area around the eyes. Hungry, she whispered. He's always hungry, but not for food. Sarah felt her professional composure waver slightly. She'd worked with children who'd witnessed domestic violence, sexual abuse, and other traumas. But Emma's case felt different. The child spoke about this figure with an intimacy that suggested personal knowledge, yet she insisted she'd never seen him. Emma, where do you think you first learned about this man? The girl finally looked up, her dark eyes meeting Sarah's directly for the first time in weeks. He visits my dreams, but he's not supposed to be there. Dreams are supposed to be private, but he gets in anyway. What does he do in your dreams? Emma returned to her drawing, adding what appeared to be a shadow behind the figure. He shows me things, places where children used to play but don't anymore. He shows me their toys, still waiting for them to come back. Sarah's breath caught. This level of detail and the specific nature of Emma's statements were far beyond typical childhood fears or even trauma responses she'd encountered. Something about the precision of the drawings and the consistency of Emma's descriptions triggered a memory, something she'd seen before but couldn't quite place. Emma, can you draw the place he shows you? The place with the toys? Without hesitation, Emma flipped to a new sheet of paper and began sketching. What emerged was a detailed woodland scene with a small clearing. In the center of the clearing, she drew what appeared to be a makeshift playground, swings hanging from tree branches, a tire hanging from a rope, and scattered throughout the scene, various toys, a red tricycle, a doll with yellow hair, building blocks spelling out letters. As Emma worked, she began to speak in a monotone voice as if reciting something she'd memorized. The red bike belongs to Maria. She was 6. The doll belongs to Ashley. She was 5. The blocks belong to Tommy. He was 7, like me. Sarah's hands began to tremble. The names, the ages, the specific details. This wasn't the product of a child's imagination. This sounded like... Emma stopped drawing for a moment, Sarah said, her voice sharper than she'd intended. The girl looked up, startled by the change in Sarah's tone. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to sound upset. Can you tell me how you know those names? Emma's eyes filled with tears. The man tells me their names. He says they're lonely and want someone to remember them. But when I try to remember them during the day, my head hurts and I feel sick. Sarah stood up abruptly, her mind racing. She walked to her desk and pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She entered Maria Ashley Tommy Missing Children Seattle into the search engine, her heart pounding as the results populated. The first link made her blood run cold. 15 years later, 3 missing children case remains unsolved. The article was dated just 2 months ago, a retrospective piece marking the anniversary of the disappearances. As Sarah clicked through to read the details, her worst fears were confirmed. Maria Santos, age 6. Ashley Chen, age 5. Tommy Morrison, age 7. All 3 children had disappeared from the Greenwood neighborhood between September and November of 2008. They had vanished within a 6-block radius of each other, all while playing outside their homes in the early evening hours. Despite an extensive investigation, no bodies were ever found, no arrests were made, and the case had gone cold within 18 months. Sarah's hands shook as she scrolled through the article. The neighborhood where the children had disappeared was less than 2 miles from where Emma lived with her grandmother. Emma, Sarah called softly, returning to the table where the girl continued drawing. Sweetheart, have you ever heard these names before? Maria Ashley Tommy? Emma shook her head. Only when the man says them. He says they were his friends, but that's not true. You don't hurt your friends. The casual way Emma delivered this statement, the implication that the man had hurt these children, sent ice through Sarah's veins. She looked down at Emma's drawing again, studying every detail. The clearing, the makeshift playground, the scattered toys. It was all rendered with photographic precision. Sarah excused herself and stepped into the hallway, pulling out her cell phone with trembling fingers. She needed to call someone. But who? The police? Child Protective Services? Her supervisor? As she stood in the corridor trying to decide on her next move, she heard Emma's voice from the office, clear and caring. "Dr. Sarah, the man says he knows you're learning about him. He says he's been waiting for someone to find him. He says it's almost time to stop hiding." Sarah's phone slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. When she rushed back into the office, Emma was staring directly at her, tears streaming down her face. "He's not just in my dreams anymore, Dr. Sarah. He's getting closer to the real world. And he's very, very hungry." Outside, the October rain continued to fall, but Sarah barely noticed. Her mind was consumed with a terrifying realization. Either Emma Rodriguez was experiencing the most complex case of childhood psychosis she'd ever encountered, or somehow, impossibly, this 7-year-old girl had connected with information about a 15-year-old cold case involving 3 missing children. And if it was the latter, Sarah feared that Emma might be the key to solving more than just a cold case. She might be the only person who could identify a predator who had been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. The session had 40 minutes remaining, but Sarah knew that everything in her life, and possibly Emma's, had just fundamentally changed. The question now wasn't whether to involve the authorities, but how to protect Emma while uncovering a truth that seemed impossible to believe. As Emma continued drawing, adding more details to her woodland scene, Sarah noticed something that made her stomach lurch. In the corner of the drawing, barely visible among the trees, Emma had sketched what appeared to be a small building or structure, and standing in front of it, watching over the entire scene like a guardian of terrible secrets, was the tall figure with the scarred face and star-shaped birthmark. The man Emma claimed had never existed outside her dreams was beginning to feel very, very real. Sarah spent the remainder of Emma's session in a state of controlled panic, her professional training warring with the growing certainty that she was dealing with something far beyond her expertise. After Emma's grandmother collected the unusually quiet child, Sarah immediately canceled her remaining appointments for the day and locked herself in her office with the case files, her laptop, and a growing sense of dread. The Seattle Police Department's online database contained limited information about the 2008 disappearances, mostly rehashed news articles and public statements. But Sarah's years of working with traumatized children had taught her that official channels weren't always the most informative. She needed to speak with someone who had been directly involved in the original investigation. It took 3 phone calls and 2 transfers before Sarah reached Detective Ray Hoffman, now retired but still living in Seattle. Hoffman had been the lead investigator on the missing children case and, according to the articles Sarah had found, had never stopped believing the cases were connected. "Dr. Chen?" Hoffman's gravelly voice carried the weight of years and too many cigarettes. "You said this was about the Greenwood children. What's your interest in a 15-year-old cold case?" Sarah had rehearsed this conversation in her mind, but actually explaining Emma's situation proved more difficult than she'd anticipated. "Detective Hoffman, I have a patient, a 7-year-old girl, who's been drawing pictures that seem to contain details about your case, details that were never made public." The line went quiet for so long that Sarah wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Hoffman spoke, his voice noticeably tighter. "What kind of details?" "The names of the children, Maria, Ashley, Tommy, descriptions of their belongings, a red tricycle, a doll with yellow hair, building blocks. And she's been drawing a man, always the same man with very specific physical characteristics." "Jesus Christ," Hoffman muttered. "Can you meet me today? I've got files that never made it into the official record. If this kid is somehow connected to what happened 15 years ago." They arranged to meet at a small diner in Ballard at 6 p.m. Sarah spent the intervening hours making copies of Emma's drawings and researching everything she could find about the case. What she discovered painted a disturbing picture of an investigation that had been hampered by jurisdictional issues, limited resources, and a suspect who seemed to vanish like smoke every time authorities got close. The Sunset Diner occupied a corner lot in an older section of Ballard, its neon sign flickering against the early evening darkness. Sarah spotted Hoffman immediately. A large man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who had seen too much over the course of a long career in law enforcement. He sat in a back booth, a manila folder thick with documents spread before him on the table. "Dr. Chen?" Hoffman stood as she approached, extending a calloused hand. "Thanks for reaching out. I've been carrying these cases for 15 years, and I'll be honest, I was starting to think I'd take them to my grave." Sarah slid into the booth across from him, placing her own folder on the table. "Before I show you my patient's drawings, can you tell me about the investigation? What happened that wasn't reported in the media?" Hoffman's expression darkened as he poured coffee from the pot the waitress had left on their table. "What happened was that we had a serial predator operating in Greenwood, and we came within inches of catching him multiple times. The media reported the disappearances as isolated incidents, but we knew better. The timeline, the victim profile, the methodology, it was all connected." He opened his folder and pulled out a series of photographs and documents. Maria Santos disappeared on September 15, 2008. She was playing in her front yard when her mother went inside to answer the phone. When Mrs. Santos came back out 5 minutes later, Maria was gone. No signs of struggle, no witnesses, nothing. Sarah studied the photograph of Maria, a beautiful little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile. The image made her think of Emma, and she felt her chest tighten. Ashley Chen vanished 3 weeks later. Hoffman continued, producing another photograph. She was Asian American, 5 years old, last seen walking to the corner store to buy candy. Her route took her past Woodland Park. A jogger reported seeing a man talking to a small girl near the park entrance around the time Ashley disappeared, but we never got a clear description. The final photograph showed Tommy Morrison, a freckled redhead with an impish grin. Tommy was the last one. November 2, 2008. He was riding his bike in the cul-de-sac where he lived when he disappeared. His bike was found 2 blocks away, abandoned in some bushes. Sarah felt sick looking at the images of these children, knowing what Emma had implied about their fate. "You said you came close to catching him?" 3 times. Hoffman's voice carried deep frustration. "We had witnesses who saw a man matching the same description near each disappearance site. Tall, thin, dark hair, some kind of facial scarring. We even had a partial license plate from a van seen in the area when Tommy went missing." He pulled out a composite sketch that made Sarah's blood freeze. The drawing showed a man with shoulder-length dark hair, hollow cheeks, and a distinctive scar running from his left ear down his jawline. But what made Sarah's hands shake was the small notation in the corner of the sketch. "Birthmark on neck, star-shaped pattern." "My God," Sarah whispered, reaching for Emma's drawings. "Detective, I need you to see these." She spread Emma's artwork across the table, watching as Hoffman's expression shifted from professional interest to stunned disbelief. The resemblance between Emma's drawings and the official composite sketch was undeniable, but Emma's version contained far more detail. The exact shape of the man's eyes, the way his hair fell across his forehead, even the specific pattern of the birthmark. "This is impossible," Hoffman breathed, picking up one of Emma's drawings. "These details. We never released information about the birthmark. Hell, we only had one witness who saw it, and she recanted her statement a week later, said she wasn't sure what she'd seen." "What happened to that witness?" Hoffman's jaw tightened. "Janet Mills. She was a school crossing guard who saw our suspect talking to Ashley the day she disappeared. 3 days after she gave us the description of the birthmark, she called and said she'd made a mistake, that the lighting had been poor, and she couldn't be certain of what she'd seen. But I always suspected someone had gotten to her. Gotten to her how? Janet was scared when she recanted. Really scared. She kept looking over her shoulder, asked if we could provide protection for her family. When I pressed her about what had changed her mind, she said she'd been getting anonymous phone calls, someone breathing into the phone but not speaking. Then her cat disappeared. Then someone left a child's toy on her front porch, a little doll with its hair cut off. Sarah felt the familiar chill run down her spine. What happened to her? She moved out of state within a month. Wouldn't give us a forwarding address. But before she left, she pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. "He knows where I live, detective. He knows where everyone lives. And he's patient. He can wait years if he has to." Sarah studied Emma's drawings again, focusing on the woodland clearing with the scattered toys. "Detective, did you ever find any physical evidence? Any location where the children might have been taken?" Hoffman nodded grimly. "We searched hundreds of acres of forest land around Seattle, found 3 different sites that looked promising. clearings where someone had obviously spent time, built makeshift structures. At one site, we found children's belongings that didn't match any of our missing kids, which suggested our suspect had been active longer than we realized. He pulled out a series of crime scene photographs that made Sarah's stomach turn. The images showed a forest clearing almost identical to the one in Emma's drawing, the same arrangement of trees, the same small structure in the background, even what appeared to be the remnants of a makeshift playground. These photos were taken at a site about 20 miles east of the city, up in the Cascade foothills. We found a red tricycle, partially buried under leaves. DNA testing confirmed it belonged to Maria Santos. Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. Just the tricycle? The tricycle and... Hoffman hesitated, his professional composure cracking slightly. Dr. Chen, what I'm about to tell you never made it into any official report. We found other things at that site. Children's clothing, toys, items that suggested our suspect had been using this location for years, possibly decades. But we also found evidence that someone had been there recently, within days of our search. What kind of evidence? Fresh footprints, cigarette butts that hadn't been weathered, and most disturbing of all, we found a notebook buried in a waterproof container. The notebook contained detailed observations about the investigation, including information that had never been released to the public. Whoever we were chasing had been monitoring our progress, staying one step ahead of us the entire time. Sarah felt the pieces of a horrifying puzzle beginning to align. Detective, do you still have that notebook? Hoffman's expression became guarded. Why do you ask? Because I think my patient might be able to identify your suspect. But more than that, I think she might be in danger. If this man is still active, if he's somehow aware that Emma is drawing him, you think he knows about the kid? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither wanted to voice. Sarah thought about Emma's final words from their session. He says he knows you're learning about him. Detective, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you believe this man is still alive? Still in the Seattle area? Hoffman was quiet for a long moment, staring down at Emma's drawings. When he looked up, his eyes held a certainty that chilled Sarah to the bone. Dr. Chen, I've been tracking unsolved missing children cases across the Pacific Northwest for 15 years. Since 2008, there have been 17 children who've disappeared under circumstances similar to Maria, Ashley, and Tommy. Different jurisdictions, different investigators, but the same pattern. The same witness descriptions when there are any witnesses at all. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I think our suspect never stopped. I think he just got better at it. And if your patient is somehow connected to him, if she's drawing him with this level of detail, you think she's seen him. I think she's seen him, and I think he knows she's seen him. Dr. Chen, I need you to understand something. In all my years of police work, I've never encountered a predator this methodical, this patient, this intelligent. If he's aware of your patient, then both of you are in serious danger. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. As she glanced at the screen, her blood turned to ice. The message was from an unknown number, and it contained only 4 words. Emma draws beautifully. Soon. Her hands shaking, Sarah showed the message to Hoffman. The retired detective's face went pale as he read it. Dr. Chen, we need to call this in immediately, and we need to make sure Emma and her grandmother are somewhere safe tonight. Sarah was already dialing Mrs. Rodriguez's number, her heart pounding as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Finally, the elderly woman's voice came through, sounding tired and strained. Mrs. Rodriguez, this is Dr. Chen. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Are you and Emma at home right now? Yes, doctor. Emma is in her room drawing again. Why? Is something wrong? Sarah looked across the table at Hoffman, who was already pulling out his own phone to call the police. Mrs. Rodriguez, I need you to pack a bag for both of you right now. Don't ask questions, just do it quickly. Someone will be there within 10 minutes to take you somewhere safe. Doctor, you're scaring me. What's happening? I'll explain everything later. Right now, I just need you to trust me. Pack your bags and be ready to leave immediately. As Sarah ended the call, Hoffman finished his conversation with the Seattle Police Department. They're sending a unit to the house now, he said. But Dr. Chen, there's something else you need to know about that forest site we searched. What? We never found the notebook I mentioned. When we went back the next day with a warrant and a full forensics team, it was gone. But there was something else in its place. A message carved into a tree trunk. Sarah's voice came out as barely a whisper. What did it say? Hoffman's eyes were haunted as he met her gaze. It said, "The children remember everything. Soon someone else will too." As if summoned by his words, Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. "Tell Detective Hoffman the notebook makes excellent reading, especially the parts about Emma's neighborhood." Sarah and Hoffman stared at each other across the diner table, the weight of 15 years of accumulated evil settling between them like a living thing. Somewhere in Seattle, a predator who had remained hidden for over a decade was making his presence known. And somehow, 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez had become the key to stopping him, or his next victim. The October rain continued to fall outside the diner windows, but neither Sarah nor Hoffman noticed. They were too busy planning how to catch a ghost who had just proven he was very much alive. The Seattle Police Department's conference room buzzed with controlled tension as Detective Lisa Park spread the case files across the long table. It was 8:30 p.m., and the emergency task force meeting had drawn together an unusual collection of law enforcement personnel, active detectives, FBI behavioral analysts, and retired Detective Hoffman, whose unofficial investigation had suddenly become very official. Sarah sat at one end of the table, feeling out of place among the career law enforcement officers, but knowing her insights into Emma's psychological state were crucial. The Rodriguez family had been moved to a safe house, but not before Emma had provided one more disturbing piece of information that had accelerated the investigation beyond anyone's expectations. Detective Park, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who had taken point on the case, addressed the room with crisp efficiency. "Let's start with what we know for certain. Dr. Chen's patient has been producing artwork that contains specific details about the 2008 Greenwood disappearances, details that were never released to the public. As of 2 hours ago, Dr. Chen received threatening text messages from someone who appears to have knowledge of both the original investigation and the current situation." She turned to a whiteboard where Emma's drawings had been pinned alongside crime scene photos and the original composite sketch. The level of detail in these drawings suggests direct observation. Either this child has somehow accessed classified case files or she's had contact with our suspect, finished FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Marcus Webb, a tall African-American man whose calm demeanor masked years of hunting the country's most dangerous predators. "Dr. Chen, you mentioned the child provided additional information at the safe house?" Sarah nodded, still shaken by what Emma had revealed just hours earlier. "When we moved Emma and her grandmother to the safe house, Emma became extremely agitated. She kept saying, 'He knows we're moving, and he can see us even when we think we're hidden.' Then she told me something that I think changes everything." She pulled out a fresh drawing Emma had completed at the safe house, a detailed sketch of a house that Sarah immediately recognized. Emma drew this without any prompting. It's her own house, but she's drawn it from an angle that would only be visible from across the street, looking down from an elevated position. Detective Park studied the drawing carefully. "You're saying she drew her house from the perspective of someone watching it?" "Not someone," Sarah corrected, her voice tight with controlled fear. "She specifically said she drew it from where the man watches from. When I asked her to explain, she said he's been watching her house for a long time, that he knows her grandmother's schedule, knows when Emma walks to school, knows which room is Emma's bedroom." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Webb leaned forward, his expression grim. "Dr. Chen, has Emma indicated how long the surveillance has been going on?" "She says he's been there since before the dream started. That would put it at least 3 months ago, possibly longer." Detective Hoffman, who had been quiet since arriving at the police station, suddenly sat up straighter. "Dr. Chen, you said Emma draws from the perspective of someone watching from an elevated position. Is there a building across from the Rodriguez house that would provide that vantage point?" Sarah felt her stomach drop as she realized what Hoffman was getting at. "There's an apartment building directly across the street, 4 stories, with a clear view of Emma's bedroom window." Detective Park was already reaching for her radio. "I need units at the Greenwood Arms apartment complex on 15th Avenue Northwest. No one enters or exits the building until we get there." As Park coordinated the response, Dr. Webb turned his attention back to Sarah. "Dr. Chen, I need you to think carefully about Emma's psychological state. Children who've been under long-term surveillance by predators often exhibit specific behavioral patterns. Has Emma shown signs of hypervigilance, regression, sleep disturbances beyond the nightmares? Sarah nodded grimly. All of those. But there's something else that's been bothering me. Emma's drawings show a level of artistic skill that's far beyond her developmental stage. It's as if the process of drawing these images bypasses her normal cognitive filters. Meaning I think Emma may be in a dissociative state when she creates these drawings. She's accessing memories or experiences that her conscious mind is protecting her from. The drawings aren't just artistic expression, they're a form of psychological testimony. Detective Park returned to the table, her expression tight with urgency. Units are in position at the apartment building, but we've got a problem. The building manager says they've had several complaints over the past few months about a tenant in 4B who keeps irregular hours and has been seen watching the street through binoculars. When they tried to contact him about the complaints, they discovered the apartment was rented under a false name with forged documents. Dr. Webb stood up immediately. We need to coordinate with the tactical team. If our suspect has been conducting surveillance for months, he'll have planned escape routes and contingencies. As the law enforcement officers began planning their approach, Sarah's phone buzzed with another text message. This time, the message made her blood freeze. Dr. Chen, your patient is very talented. I have a collection of children's artwork. Would you like to see Emma's pieces displayed with the others? Sarah showed the message to Detective Park, who immediately forwarded it to the department's cybercrimes unit for tracing. But even as the technical team worked to track the message's origin, another text arrived. The apartment in 4B is disappointingly empty, I'm afraid. But don't worry, Emma and I will have our meeting soon. The tactical team's radio crackled with confirmation of what everyone already feared. The apartment was vacant, hastily abandoned, but showing clear signs of long-term occupation. Surveillance equipment, photographs of the Rodriguez house taken from multiple angles, and most disturbing of all, a collection of children's drawings pinned to one wall like trophies. How many drawings? Detective Park asked through her radio. The response chilled everyone in the conference room. Dozens. Different children, different time periods based on the paper and materials used. Some of these look like they could be 15 years old. Sarah felt the room spinning around her. He's been collecting artwork from his victims. Emma's drawings aren't unique. He's done this before. Doctor? Webb nodded grimly. It's a psychological trigger. He uses the children's own artwork as a way to maintain connection with them, to relive the experience. But more than that, I think he's been using the drawing process as a form of psychological preparation. Preparation for what? For abduction. Think about it. Emma's drawings show she's been under surveillance for months. Her artwork demonstrates that she's psychologically connected to him, that he's established a presence in her unconscious mind. He's been grooming her through the dream imagery, preparing her to be compliant when he finally makes physical contact. Detective Park's radio crackled again with an update from the tactical team. Detective, you need to see this. We found a notebook hidden behind a loose baseboard. It contains detailed schedules and observations about multiple families in the Greenwood area, going back months. The Rodriguez family is just one of several being monitored. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. This wasn't about Emma specifically. She was just the latest target in an ongoing operation that had been running for far longer than anyone had realized. Sarah's phone buzzed once more. The notebook makes fascinating reading, doesn't it, Detective Park? You'll find the entries about the Chen family particularly interesting. Detective Park's face went white as she realized the message was directed at her personally. He's been monitoring our investigation from the beginning. He knows we're here, knows what we're doing. Dr. Webb stood up, his calm demeanor finally cracking. This level of preparation, this depth of surveillance and psychological manipulation, we're not dealing with an opportunistic predator. This is someone with extensive training in surveillance, psychological operations, possibly military or intelligence background. As if in response to his assessment, Sarah's phone buzzed with a final message. Dr. Webb is very perceptive. Emma will appreciate meeting someone with my particular skill set. The appointment is scheduled for midnight. Detective Park was already coordinating with dispatch, but everyone in the room knew they were playing catch-up with someone who had been planning this confrontation for months. The safe house location would have to be changed immediately, but the psychological damage was already done. Sarah thought about Emma, probably sitting in an unfamiliar room, drawing pictures of a man who had been invading her dreams and planning her abduction for months. The child's artwork hadn't been random expressions of trauma. They had been a cry for help, a desperate attempt by her unconscious mind to communicate a danger her conscious mind couldn't fully process. "Detective Park," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I need to be part of whatever operation you're planning. Emma trusts me. And if this confrontation is inevitable, she's going to need psychological support." "Absolutely not, Dr. Chen. This suspect has demonstrated he's been monitoring you personally. You'd be walking into—" Sarah's phone buzzed one final time. The message contained just 2 words that changed everything. Sarah's choice. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. The predator, who had been hunting children for over 15 years, had just made the confrontation personal. Emma Rodriguez was no longer just another potential victim. She had become bait in a trap designed specifically for Dr. Sarah Chen. Outside, the October rain continued to fall over Seattle, washing the streets clean while somewhere in the darkness, a patient hunter prepared for the endgame he had been orchestrating for months. The question now wasn't whether Sarah would walk into the trap. It was whether law enforcement could turn the predator's own plan against him before midnight arrived, and Emma Rodriguez became another name on a list of children who had simply vanished into the night. As Detective Park coordinated the largest manhunt in Seattle's recent history, Sarah stared at Emma's drawings spread across the conference table and realized that everything, the artwork, the dreams, even the therapy sessions themselves, had been part of a larger design. They weren't hunting a predator. The predator was hunting them. The safe house on Queen Anne Hill felt like a fortress under siege as midnight approached. Seattle Police Department's SWAT team had established a perimeter, while FBI agents monitored communications from a mobile command center parked discreetly down the block. Inside the modest 2-bedroom house, Emma Rodriguez sat at the kitchen table, drawing with an intensity that had everyone on edge. Sarah watched the child work, noting how Emma's hand moved across the paper with increasing urgency. The drawing taking shape was different from the others. This one showed the interior of a building, with what appeared to be multiple rooms connected by corridors. In each room, Emma had drawn small figures that were unmistakably children. "Emma," Sarah said softly, settling into the chair beside her, "can you tell me about this place you're drawing?" Emma didn't look up from her work. "It's where they all are. Maria and Ashley and Tommy and all the others. He keeps them there so they won't be lonely." Detective Park, who had been monitoring radio communications, approached the table. "Emma, is this a real place? Somewhere you've seen before?" For the first time in hours, Emma stopped drawing and looked up. Her dark eyes held a clarity that was both heartbreaking and terrifying. "I've never been there with my body," she said carefully. "But my dreams go there. The man takes me there in my sleep to show me his collection." "His collection?" Sarah felt her stomach turn. "The children who remember him? He says forgetting is worse than anything else, so he makes sure they remember forever." Dr. Webb, who had been silent since arriving at the safe house, leaned forward. "Emma, in your dreams, does this man ever tell you his name?" Emma nodded. "He says his name is Mr. Memory, but that's not his real name. His real name is—" She paused, her brow furrowing as if trying to recall something difficult. "His real name is written in the place where he keeps the children. It's on a wall, carved deep, so it won't fade." Sarah exchanged glances with Detective Park. Emma's psychological state was deteriorating rapidly, but the information she was providing was becoming increasingly specific and potentially actionable. "Emma, can you draw the wall where the name is written?" Without hesitation, Emma flipped to a fresh sheet of paper and began sketching what appeared to be a concrete or stone wall. As her drawing developed, letters began to emerge, carved deep as she had described. "David Nathaniel Brooks, the children's friend." Detective Park immediately radioed the command center. "I need a full background check on David Nathaniel Brooks, possibly military service, age 40-50, likely with psychological operations or surveillance training." While Park coordinated the information search, Emma continued drawing, adding details to the wall that made Sarah's blood run cold. Below the carved name, Emma drew what appeared to be a list of dates and names, arranged in chronological order. At the bottom of the list, in fresh marks that suggested recent carving, were the names Maria Santos, Ashley Chen, Tommy Morrison, followed by dates from September and November 2008. And at the very bottom, in letters that Emma drew with a shaking hand, was Emma Rodriguez, followed by today's date. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows and the crackle of radio communications. Emma set down her crayon and looked directly at Sarah. "Dr. Sarah, he's not coming here tonight to take me away. He's coming here to give me a choice." "What kind of choice, sweetheart?" "He says I can join the other children who remember him, or—" Emma's voice trailed off and she began crying softly. "Or what, Emma? Or I can help him find someone else who draws pictures like I do. Someone younger who won't remember him as clearly." The implication hit Sarah like a physical blow. The predator wasn't just hunting Emma. He was trying to turn her into an accomplice, to use her psychological connection to identify other potential victims. Detective Park's radio crackled with an urgent update. "Detective, we've got a match on David Nathaniel Brooks, former Army Psychological Operations Specialist, served 3 tours in Afghanistan, discharged in 2007 for psychological instability. Last known address was in Tacoma, but he's been off the grid since 2008. Sarah felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. 2008 was when the Greenwood children disappeared. His discharge date matches the timeline perfectly. Dr. Webb nodded grimly. Psychological operations training would explain his surveillance capabilities and his sophisticated understanding of child psychology. He's been using military tactics to hunt civilians. Emma looked up from her drawing, tears still streaming down her face. "He's here," she whispered. Everyone in the room froze. Detective Park immediately signaled to the SWAT team positions, but no alerts had come through the radio. "Emma, what do you mean he's here? I can feel him in my mind. He's very close now and he's—" Emma suddenly gasped, her eyes rolling back as she fell into what appeared to be a seizure. Sarah immediately moved to support Emma, but the child's body went rigid, her hand still clutching the crayon. Impossibly, her hand continued moving across the paper, drawing with mechanical precision even while she was unconscious. The drawing that emerged showed the exterior of the safe house from an elevated angle, the same perspective Emma had drawn her own home from. But this drawing included details that chilled everyone watching: the positions of the SWAT team members, the location of the command center, even the interior layout of the house as viewed through windows. "He's been surveilling this location," Detective Park said, immediately reaching for her radio. "All units, we have a compromise. The suspect has visual on our position." But before she could complete her transmission, every phone in the house began ringing simultaneously. Sarah's cell phone, Detective Park's radio, Dr. Webb's pager, even the landline that nobody should have had the number for. Sarah answered her phone with trembling hands. The voice that came through was calm, cultured, and absolutely terrifying in its reasonableness. "Dr. Chen, I believe it's time for Emma and me to complete our appointment. I'm calling to arrange the final session." "Where are you?" "I'm everywhere Emma dreams, Dr. Chen, but more practically, I'm close enough to see you standing in the kitchen, supporting Emma while she draws our conversation." Sarah looked down at Emma, who was indeed drawing what appeared to be a figure holding a phone, surrounded by other figures in tactical gear. "What do you want?" "I want what I've always wanted: to help children remember. Emma has such a remarkable memory, Dr. Chen. She remembers things she's never seen, places she's never been, people she's never met. That's a very special gift. You've been terrorizing a 7-year-old child. I've been teaching her. There's a difference. Emma now understands that memory is precious, that forgetting is the real tragedy. The children I work with never forget anything important again." Detective Park was frantically coordinating with the tactical teams, but Sarah realized that conventional law enforcement tactics were useless against someone who had been planning this confrontation for months. "Brooks, this is Detective Park with Seattle PD. You're surrounded. There's no way out of this situation." The voice on the phone chuckled softly. "Detective Park, I appreciate your dedication, but you're thinking about this incorrectly. I'm not trying to escape. I'm trying to complete my work. Emma suddenly convulsed in Sarah's arms, her unconscious hand now drawing what appeared to be a countdown, numbers descending from 10 to 0. Brooks, what are you counting down to? Dr. Chen, Emma is about to wake up, and when she does, she's going to walk outside to meet me. She won't have a choice in the matter. We've established too strong a psychological connection for her to resist. You can try to stop her, but that will only traumatize her further. Sarah felt Emma's body beginning to relax, the seizure-like state ending. The child's eyes fluttered open, but something had changed. Her expression was vacant, almost drugged. Emma? Sarah called softly. Emma stood up without responding, her movements mechanical and purposeful. She walked toward the front door with the steady gait of someone following precise instructions. Detective Park moved to block her path, but Dr. Webb grabbed her arm. Don't. If Brooks has established psychological control, forcing Emma to stop could cause permanent psychological damage. We need another approach. Sarah made a decision that went against every professional instinct she had. Brooks, I'm coming with her. Dr. Chen, that's not necessary. This appointment is specifically for Emma. Then make it for both of us. You've been monitoring me for months, studying my methods, probably learning more about child psychology from watching me work than from any textbook. You want to complete your research? Do it with a professional observer. The phone was quiet for a long moment. Emma had reached the front door and was standing motionless, her hand on the doorknob, waiting. Dr. Chen, you're offering yourself as a witness to my work? I'm offering myself as a colleague. You have insights into child psychology that could revolutionize the field. Let me document your methods. Sarah was gambling that Brooks' narcissism and his need for validation would override his caution. Military psychological operations specialists were trained to build rapport and trust. If she could appeal to his professional pride, she might be able to maintain some control over the situation. Very well, Dr. Chen. Emma's appointment will include a consultation. But understand that once you step outside, you become part of the treatment process. There's no returning to your role as an outside observer. Emma opened the front door and stepped into the October night. Sarah followed, feeling the eyes of the tactical team on her back, and knowing that she was walking into a situation where her professional training might not be enough to save either of them. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. Emma walked with the same mechanical precision down the sidewalk, turning left at the corner and heading toward a dark sedan parked under a broken streetlight. As they approached the car, a figure emerged from the driver's side. David Brooks was exactly as Emma had drawn him. Tall, thin, with shoulder-length dark hair and the distinctive scar running from his left ear to his jawline. The star-shaped birthmark on his neck was clearly visible in the streetlight. But what struck Sarah most was his eyes. They held the same quality she had seen in Emma's drawings. Sad on the surface, but something else entirely underneath. Something patient and hungry and utterly without empathy. Dr. Chen, Brooks said, his voice the same cultured tone from the phone. Thank you for joining us. Emma has been so looking forward to completing her treatment. Emma stood beside the car, motionless and silent, her eyes fixed on some point in the distance. Brooks, before we go any further, I need to understand your methodology. What exactly are you treating Emma for? Brooks smiled, and Sarah realized that Emma's artistic skills hadn't captured the most terrifying thing about him, the complete absence of human warmth in his expression. Dr. Chen, Emma suffers from the same condition that affects all children her age. She's forgetting. Every day she forgets a little more about what's really important. I help children remember everything. Forever. As he spoke, Sarah noticed movement in the shadows around them. The tactical team was in position, but they were waiting for her signal. The problem was that Emma was standing directly between Sarah and Brooks, and any sudden movement could result in the child being harmed. Brooks, show me how the treatment works. Walk me through your process. Brooks opened the rear door of the sedan, revealing an interior that had been modified with restraints and what appeared to be medical equipment. The treatment begins with transportation to the memory center, Dr. Chen. That's where Emma will join the other children who've completed their therapy. Sarah realized this was the moment of maximum danger. Once Emma was in the car, the tactical team would lose their opportunity for a clean intervention. She had to act now, but in a way that wouldn't trigger Brooks's training or put Emma at further risk. Brooks, before we proceed, I need Emma to demonstrate her progress. As a fellow professional, surely you understand the importance of documenting therapeutic outcomes. Brooks paused, his hand on the car door. What kind of demonstration? Emma has been drawing your memory center. I'd like her to show you what she's learned, to prove that your treatment has been effective. It was a desperate gambit, but Sarah hoped that Brooks' need for validation would override his caution. More importantly, she hoped that engaging Emma in the drawing process might break whatever psychological hold Brooks had established. Emma, Sarah called softly, can you show Mr. Brooks your drawing of his special place? Emma turned slowly, her vacant expression flickering slightly. The place where the children remember? Yes, sweetheart. Show him how well you remember. Emma reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the drawing she had completed at the safe house, the interior layout of Brooks' memory center. As she held it up, Brooks stepped closer to examine it, his professional curiosity overcoming his tactical awareness. Remarkable, he murmured, studying the drawing. Emma, you've captured details I never specifically described. The layout of the individual rooms, the arrangement of the memory displays. What are memory displays? Sarah asked, though she feared she already knew. Each child has their own room where their most important memories are preserved. Their artwork, their personal belongings, recordings of their voices. Everything that made them unique, protected forever from the degradation of time and forgetting. Sarah felt sick but forced herself to maintain her professional composure. And the children themselves? They remain as custodians of their own memories, Dr. Chen. They ensure nothing is lost, nothing is forgotten. Emma suddenly spoke, her voice stronger than it had been since leaving the safe house. But they're not happy custodians, are they, Mr. Brooks? They cry all the time, and they ask for their families. Brooks's expression darkened. Emma, you're not remembering correctly. The children in my care are content. They understand the importance of their role. No, Emma said, her voice growing stronger. Tommy cries for his mother. Ashley keeps asking when she can go home. Maria just rocks back and forth and won't eat. They're not happy, Mr. Brooks. They're scared and lonely, and they want to leave. Sarah realized that Emma's psychological connection to Brooks was working in reverse. Instead of him controlling her, she was accessing his actual memories of the children he had taken. The vacant expression was leaving her eyes, replaced by the same clarity and determination Sarah had seen in their therapy sessions. Emma, can you tell me where these children are? Can you show me the way to help them? Brooks stepped back, his hand moving toward what Sarah assumed was a weapon. Dr. Chen, you're interfering with the treatment process. Emma is experiencing false memories, confabulation brought on by the stress of the situation. The building is underground, Emma said, her voice now completely clear and strong. It's carved into the hillside east of the city, hidden by trees. There are 17 rooms, and each room has a child in it. They've been there for years, Mr. Brooks. Some of them don't remember what sunlight looks like. Brooks's careful composure finally cracked. Emma, stop talking. You're confusing your dreams with reality. They're not dreams, Emma said, stepping away from the car and closer to Sarah. They're memories. Your memories. And now I remember all of them. Sarah realized what had happened. Brooks' psychological manipulation had worked too well. Instead of just establishing control over Emma, he had created a genuine psychic connection that allowed the child to access his experiences directly. Emma hadn't just been drawing what she imagined. She had been drawing Brooks's actual memories. Emma, can you describe the location more specifically? 23 miles east on Highway 2, then north on a logging road. The entrance looks like a storm drain, but it opens into tunnels that go deep into the hill. Mr. Brooks carved it out over years, making it perfect for his collection. Brooks pulled a gun from his jacket, but his hand was shaking. Both of you, get in the car now. This has gone far enough. Sarah stepped protectively in front of Emma, but the child moved around her, facing Brooks directly. Mr. Brooks, I know you're scared. I can feel your fear. You're afraid the children will be found, afraid they'll tell people what you've done to them. I've preserved them, Brooks said, his voice cracking. I've saved them from forgetting, from growing up and losing their innocence. You've hurt them, Emma said simply. And now, they're going to be free. Brooks raised the gun, but Emma didn't flinch. Instead, she began to draw in the air with her finger, as if she were creating one of her pictures. "I'm drawing all of them going home, Mr. Brooks. Maria going home to her mother, Ashley going home to her father, Tommy going home to his family. I'm drawing them running in the sunlight playing with other children, forgetting all about the dark rooms and the scary man who kept them underground." Something in Emma's words and actions seemed to break Brooks's psychological control. He stared at her in horror, as if seeing clearly for the first time what he had done. "They can't forget," he whispered. "If they forget, then it was all meaningless. They have to remember. They'll remember being rescued," Emma said gently. "They'll remember being brave. They'll remember that someone cared enough to find them and bring them home. Those are good memories, Mr. Brooks. The kind that make children stronger, not weaker." Brooks lowered the gun, his face collapsing with the weight of years of rationalization falling away. "What have I done?" he whispered. The tactical team moved in swiftly, securing Brooks and the weapon while Sarah gathered Emma into her arms. The child was shaking now, the adrenaline and psychological strain finally taking their toll. "Emma, you were so brave," Sarah whispered. "You saved those children." "I could feel them all," Emma said, her voice small and tired. "All the scared children, all the sadness. But I could also feel them wanting to go home. That was stronger than the sadness." Detective Park coordinated the search teams heading to the location Emma had described, while FBI agents processed Brooks for transportation to federal custody. As dawn broke over Seattle, the largest rescue operation in the city's history was already underway. 3 hours later, the first reports came back from the search site. The underground complex was exactly as Emma had described: 17 rooms carved into the hillside, each containing a child who had been held captive for years. All 17 children were alive, though they would require extensive medical and psychological treatment. Maria Santos, Ashley Chen, and Tommy Morrison were among the rescued children, now young adults who had spent their teenage years in captivity. The oldest captive was a girl who had been taken in 1995 when she was 6 years old. She was now 29, having spent more than half her life in Brooks' underground prison. Sarah sat with Emma in the hospital while the child was examined by medical professionals. Emma had asked to continue drawing, but now her pictures showed children playing in sunlight, families reuniting, and scenes of healing and hope. "Dr. Sarah," Emma said as she worked on a drawing of children running through a field, "will the scary dreams go away now?" "I think they will, sweetheart. But if they don't, we'll work on them together. You've been very brave, and now you get to be just a little girl again." Emma smiled for the first time since Sarah had known her. "I'd like that. Being just a little girl sounds nice." As Emma continued drawing, Sarah reflected on the case that had challenged everything she thought she knew about child psychology and the nature of memory itself. Emma's drawings had been more than artistic expression. They had been a bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind, between the known and unknown, between the living and those who had been forgotten. The 17 children rescued from Brooks's underground complex would need years of therapy and support to heal from their ordeal. But they were alive, they were free, and they had been found because a 7-year-old girl had the courage to remember things that existed only in a predator's mind. Outside the hospital, Seattle was waking up to news of the largest rescue operation in the city's history. The media would tell the story of law enforcement's triumph over evil, of high-tech investigation and tactical precision. But Sarah knew the real story was simpler and more profound. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against darkness is a child's crayon, and the courage to draw what others cannot see. Emma Rodriguez had shown that memory, properly understood, was not just about preserving the past. It was about creating a future where children could be safe, where families could heal, and where even the darkest secrets could be brought into the light through the simple act of putting truth on paper. The case was closed, but Emma's real journey, learning to be just a little girl again, was only beginning. What did you think of Emma's incredible story and her brave journey to help rescue those children? This case shows us how sometimes the most unexpected heroes can emerge from the darkest situations. Did Emma's psychic connection with the predator surprise you, or did you see it coming? And what about Dr. Sarah's decision to walk into danger to protect her patient? Would you have made the same choice? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If stories like this one grip you and keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest true crime investigations. And if this story moved you as much as it moved me, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us bring you more incredible stories like Emma's. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important truths.